After facing multiple allegations from female officers, the former police chief now says that he is gay. What relevance does that have on his case? We'll ask a legal expert.
A day after Seattle's former police chief revealed he is gay, there are questions surfacing about how that might impact the accusations of sexual discrimination and harassment against him. A former prosecutor told KOMO's Michelle Esteban he thinks Diaz's sexual orientation is likely irrelevant, but his timing strategic.
I can't imagine that Chief Diaz would have gone public like this in a PR move without thinking it through and actually probably rehearsing it through with his attorneys.
Attorney Mark Lindquist is talking about what Seattle's former top cop revealed on the Jason Ranch show on KTTH radio.
It's a story that has struggled with over the last 4 years, that I'm a gay Latino man.
Lindquist says anything you're hearing from Diaz regarding PR is undoubtedly part of his legal strategy.
But there's never a good time to then say, hey, I am a gay man. And then the accusations started coming. And in my head, I'm like, it's clear that these aren't true.
Toria Beach, an ardent Diaz supporter, was asked about the chief's timing.
He wanted to use his own words and come out. I don't know if he would have come out right away.
Diaz is facing several accusations of discrimination, sexual harassment, and a hostile work environment at SPD. 4 female officers in April filed a $5 million tort, claiming in part a culture of predatory behavior.
Most of the accusations, however, are not leveled at him personally, but rather at the culture of SPD. And his sexual preference is entirely irrelevant to whether or not there is a hostile or misogynistic culture.
Just because you're a gay man doesn't mean that you can't be a misogynist, but I know who I am, and I know what I've done, and I know that I've been always true to myself and always treated people well.
The evidence, the accusations, and the new revelations now for the courts to decide. Michelle Esteban, KOMO News.
More than 24 hours after former Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz revealed he is a gay man, there are many new questions tonight about how that revelation might impact the legal cases that have been stacking up against him in recent weeks. I spoke to reporter Michelle Esteban about that and also what happens next. So, Michelle Esteban, thanks for being with us tonight. Obviously, this was a big revelation that the former police chief revealed yesterday about his sexuality. And I now know that some of the questions that are surfacing have to do with how this might impact some of those claims that have been made against him regarding alleged sexual discrimination and harassment. What are you hearing about that today?
Well, it's interesting. I called a lot of different people to talk about the case. A lot of the people that are involved in the case, most of them just did not want to comment. But I did reach out to former prosecutor Mark Lindquist in Pierce County, who works as an attorney now. And one of the things he said right out of the gate to me is, when you look at a lot of these cases, a lot of this is really not so much about the chief, but it's more about culture at SPD. And he said, when you think about that, he said he doesn't really think that the sexual orientation is really going to matter that much. In fact, he even used the word irrelevant. But he says, clearly there are problems at SPD. And as you know, Steve, the CPC, the Community Policing Commission, has constantly said, we are hearing the biggest priority that we hear all the time from the community is the culture at SPD and how they treat people of color, how they treat women. And that's something that they're looking at very closely. But to get back to your question, Lindquist really seemed to think that this would be irrelevant because he felt like this was more about, as I mentioned, the culture at SPD.
What about the timing of this? I'm sure some are asking, why would the former chief come forward and reveal this, a very personal thing about his life at this point? Why would he do it now?
Yeah, great question. And I think that is top of mind for so many people. And I think that the announcement on the Jason Ranch show yesterday did surprise a lot of people. I don't think people had heard that before. The chief said that he had struggled for the last 4 years trying to find the right time. But I'll go back to my interview with Lindquist. He looked at this and he said, look, make no mistake about this. This timing is very deliberate. This is very strategic. And when you are in a case like this that is very high profile and tends to be very politicized, he said it is not uncommon to kind of have a PR defense that works in concert with the legal defense.
Obviously, Diaz had his interview with Jason Ranch yesterday. Do we expect to hear from him directly at any point?
We do. We heard yesterday that he would be speaking probably at the end of the week. I checked in with some folks who told me that he is not going to be doing any interviews today because I specifically said, let's sit down and let's ask the chief about the timing here. I mean, I do want to pull up one of the quotes that came up during the interview is he said, there was never a good time, quote unquote, to say, hey, I'm a gay man. And then the accusations started coming. And in my head, I'm like, it's clear that these aren't true and no one gave me an opportunity. So I look at that and I read that as he created the opportunity. So perhaps he's wanted to talk about it. One of the things that Lindquist also talked about that I think makes a lot of sense is he's probably looking at his future at SPD as well as his future beyond SPD. And one of the things that I know that and maybe the viewers don't is that the chief yesterday during that interview said that he has interviewed for the police chief in Austin, Texas. He wants to be a chief. He loves being a chief. He loves this city. He wants to continue being the chief here, but he understood that this was a distraction and it was a mutual decision between him and the mayor's office. And then we did double check. The mayor's office did confirm for us yesterday that Diaz did reach out to him as well as his staff a few months ago and said that he was gay. And so this wasn't certainly a surprise to them, but I think it was probably a surprise to a lot of constituents and residents of the Seattle area.
Yeah, and another person we want to hear from too, I think, is the mayor. And I know that the mayor's office put out a brief statement about this yesterday. Have we heard anything from Bruce Harrell today at all?
Yeah, I asked for a sit down with the mayor and they didn't say no. What they told me was he just doesn't have the time today in his schedule.
Hmm.
So that says to me that we'll be able to catch up with him and we may just have to do it when he's out and about. And he's usually pretty good about taking questions from us. But one of the things that they told us yesterday in a statement was that they were glad for the chief that he's living his truth and is speaking his truth, but that with regard to the sexual orientation, how this will play out in litigation, they're not commenting on that. And that is really in the hands of the court. And I think that that's the big takeaway here. We don't know what we don't know. These are accusations. We've got to wait for some evidence here. There's a lot of cases here. I reached out to those 4 female officers who filed that tort claim. That was back in April. It's for $5 million. And it alleges, predatory behavior. It alleges grooming. I wanted to speak to their attorney. He is out of town today, but he did get back to me and said no comment. So that's pretty typical with litigation. But again, such a high profile case, a high profile person that, it's up to us to ask these questions. And we'd love to sit down with the chief and we'll keep working on that and bring that to you when we get it.
Yeah, certainly a lot more questions. And thanks for digging into it for us. Michelle, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Happy to be with you. Thanks, Steve.